Looking today at Exodus chapter 10. How you doing, Calvin? It's good to see you.
Okay, good morning. How are you?
I'm doing good, doing good. All right.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Good morning. And y'all keep in mind we have Wayne on the phone here, so he's here with us as well.
Good morning, Wayne.
Good morning, Wayne. Good morning, Wayne.
Morning, congregation. Morning.
All right. So we are in Exodus, and much like how we are experiencing in our world, this world in which we are reading is going through some issues. They got some problems and they got some plagues, and we were looking at these and how they are associating with them. And so we kind of looked at the plagues of the water being turned to blood. We saw the frogs. We saw the lice. We saw the flies. And then we saw the cattle that was afflicted. And then at the point where the cattle was afflicted, that's where the plague started showing differences, because the plague would hit the Egyptian land, but not the land of Goshen, where the Israelites were. And then we saw that continue, because then we saw the boils, and once again there was a division. We saw the hail, and once again there was a division. And so today we're going to look at a couple more, Lord willing, if we're able to get chapter 11 as well as 10. We will kind of have all of the plagues introduced to us. One of the other things that I noticed, that if you look back when we went through chapter 8, when I'm sorry, not chapter 8. It was chapter 8. When the lice came, all the previous plagues were able to be duplicated by the Egyptian pharaohs and the Egyptian. But at plague number 3, where the lice came, the magicians of Egypt were not able to reproduce it, and they actually said to Pharaoh, "This is a thing of God. And this is not something that man is able to do." So that's just a quick little background of what we looked at so far. So what we're going to do now is we're going to go right into our study on chapter 10. Let's take a listen to our chapter, and then we'll go forth from there. All right, so let me just get it going here. Chapter 10. There we go.
Chapter 10. Now the Lord said to Moses, "Go into Pharaoh, for I have hardened his heart and the hearts of his servants, that I may show these signs of mine before him, and that you may tell in the hearing of your son and your son's son the mighty things I have done in Egypt, and my signs which I have done among them, that you may know that I am the Lord." So Moses and Aaron came into Pharaoh and said to him, "Thus says the Lord God of the Hebrews, how long will you refuse to humble yourself before me? Let my people go, that they may serve me. Or else, if you refuse to let my people go, behold, tomorrow I will bring locusts into your territory, and they shall cover the face of the earth, so that no one will be able to see the earth. And they shall eat the residue of what is left, which remains to you from the hail, and they shall eat every tree which grows up for you out of the field. They shall fill your houses, the houses of all your servants, and the houses of all the Egyptians, which neither your fathers nor your fathers' fathers have seen, since the day that they were on the earth to this day." And he turned and went out from Pharaoh. Then Pharaoh's servant said to him, "How long shall this man be a snare to us? Let the men go, that they may serve the Lord their God. Do you not yet know that Egypt is destroyed?" So Moses and Aaron were brought again to Pharaoh, and he said to them, "Go, serve the Lord your God. Who are the ones that are going?" And Moses said, "We will go with our young and our old, with our sons and our daughters, with our flocks and our herds. We will go, for we must hold a feast to the Lord." Then he said to them, "The Lord had better be with you when I let you and your little ones go. Beware, for evil is ahead of you. Not so. Go now, you who are men, and serve the Lord, for that is what you desired." And they were driven out from Pharaoh's presence. Then the Lord said to Moses, "Stretch out your hand over the land of Egypt for the locusts, that they may come upon the land of Egypt, and eat every herb of the land, all that the hail has left." So Moses stretched out his rod over the land of Egypt, And the Lord brought an east wind on the land all that day and all that night. When it was morning, the east wind brought the locusts. And the locusts went up over all the land of Egypt and rested on all the territory of Egypt. They were very severe. Previously there had been no such locusts as they, nor shall there be such after them. For they covered the face of the whole earth, so that the land was darkened, and they ate every herb of the land, and all the fruit of the trees which the hail had left. So there remained nothing green on the trees or on the plants of the field throughout all the land of Egypt. Then Pharaoh called for Moses and Aaron in haste, and said, I have sinned against the Lord your God and against you. Now therefore, please forgive my sin only this once, and entreat the Lord your God that he may take away from me this death only. So he went out from Pharaoh and entreated the Lord. And the Lord turned a very strong west wind, which took the locusts away, and blew them into the Red Sea. There remained not one locust in all the territory of Egypt. But the Lord hardened Pharaoh's heart, and he did not let the children of Israel go. Then the Lord said to Moses, Stretch out your hand toward heaven, that there may be darkness over the land of Egypt, darkness which may even be felt. So Moses stretched out his hand toward heaven, and there was thick darkness in all the land of Egypt 3 days. They did not see one another, nor did anyone rise from his place for 3 days. But all the children of Israel had light in their dwellings. Then Pharaoh called to Moses and said, Go, serve the Lord. Only let your flocks and your herds be kept back. Let your little ones also go with you. But Moses said, You must also give us sacrifices and burnt offerings, that we may sacrifice to the Lord our God. Our livestock also shall go with us. Not a hoof shall be left behind. For we must take some of them to serve the Lord our God. And even we do not know with what we must serve the Lord until we arrive there. But the Lord hardened Pharaoh's heart, and he would not let them go. Then Pharaoh said to him, Get away from me. Take heed to yourself, and see my face no more. For in the day you see my face, you shall die. So Moses said, You have spoken well. I will never see your face again.
All right, so there we go with chapter 10. Now, what we notice here when we get into chapter 10 is this has just been a prolonging and an ongoing consistency with Pharaoh. And I think that's important to outline, because what you will see is that regardless as to what Pharaoh says or how he tries to maneuver himself to get favor, to get things that he wants, Pharaoh is consistent in his heart. His heart may try to show favor. He may try to show that, yeah, I'm on your side, or I want your well-being, or okay, I'm going to go with you. But the root of his heart is he does not want the betterment or any kind of proper justice done to the Hebrew people. He doesn't want these slaves gone. That's how he truly feels. And I think it's important when we point that out, when we understand that there are people like that. There are people, you know, that old song back in the day, smile in your face all the time, they're trying to take your place, the backstabbers. You remember that old song? Well, there's a reality to that there are people that have that mindset, no matter what they may try to portray and show with their outward mask. Their inward portion has a concept, a belief, and a real feeling about situations, people, or even you, or themselves. And that's what God knows. And that's the difference. See, we only can see the mask that people put on. We can only see them that they show. Whereas God knows the reality of it. And so, once again, in this story, we're going to see this mask put on, but then God showing, I know what your reality is. And I'm going to allow you to see what I see about yourself. And sometimes that's not pleasant. But the thing is that when you see what you see about yourself, a lot of times so do other people. And they begin to recognize truly what it is that you are dealing with and what you are all about. So look at verse 1 here. And it says, And the Lord said unto Moses, Go unto Pharaoh. And look at this. For I have hardened his heart. And we talked about this, and I think it's important to just reiterate that when it says that God has hardened his heart, it means that God has locked Pharaoh in to what he has chosen to believe and to think. A lot of times we think that we can play with God and we can say, well, you know what, I'm going to do what I want to do for as long as I want to do it. And then when I get tired, I'm going to just stop and I'll go to God and say, God, I'm sorry, forgive me. And according to the scripture, he's supposed to say, well, if you come unto me, I will in no wise cast you out. Well, yeah, that's if you come unto him. Because see what God can do when you want to play those kind of games, because God isn't, you can't trick him. You can't find a loophole. If you have that in your heart, it's not going to work, because he will lock you into what your true spirit is. And that's what he does here with Pharaoh. Pharaoh is locked in because in reality, Pharaoh doesn't want anything that's not beneficial to him. He doesn't want to know God unless knowing God will make him better. He doesn't want to serve God unless serving God will make him better. The only thing he wants from God is a means in which that can actually make him better or improve, or he gets some kind of an advantage. Now, that's the spirit of who? The devil. All right?
But he also, brother, see, he said, he also hardened his servant's heart. The servants.
Yeah, he did. He said, I have hardened his heart and the heart of his servants. You remember those magicians and all those people that were with him? But we're going to see here, we're going to come back to that as well, because they're going to be, you're going to see a statement here about some of the Egyptians, how some of them are recognizing God is this God of these Hebrews are real. But that's true. Yes, he also hardened the heart of the servants. And so what you have is a leader that, you know, what Jesus said, how can a blind man lead the blind? They both will what? Fall in the ditch. And that's a prime example here of one leading somebody else, and they're following, and all of them are locked in. Look at verse 2. And that thou mayest tell in the ears of thy sons and thy sons' sons what things I have wrought in Egypt, and my signs which I have done among them, that ye may know how that I am the Lord. Now, what the Lord is telling Moses, he says, I've hardened Pharaoh's heart, but there's something else you're going to get out of this. I want you to, when this experience is over, and I'm going to bring you through, and you're going to come out, but I want this to be one of the lessons that you tell your children. You're going to experience something that your kids are not going to experience. They're not going to have that same experience that you had. But you're going to tell them. See, they're not going to be slaves to Egypt, but you were. And you're going to tell them how you came out. They're not going to cross through the Red Sea, but you are. But you're going to tell them how God brought you through. They're not going to have to experience all the plagues and see all the plagues that happened to Egypt, but you saw it, and you got to tell them. So now what does that require? What does that say? It speaks to us as those that have experienced and have gone through things using very similar teaching methods and means in which God teaches us. Because in order for your children to accept what you say, they got to have faith in what? In you. So they say, well, I didn't see this, but let me tell you, it happened. You mean the Red Sea opened up? And yes, I've never seen the Red Sea open up. I know, because you weren't alive when it happened. But it did happen. And I'm trying to get you to understand that it was God. He did it. It wasn't a trick. It wasn't some kind of thing that happened, mysterious nature plot. It was a real manifestation of the power of God. And so he's saying, make sure that the things that you are experiencing, you share that. Now, that's in connection with what we talked about before. Remember when Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob were going from one experience to another, and they were feeling weak or like they couldn't manage what God had asked them to do, and then God would come and visit them. And they would have this experience. Jacob had the ladder. Isaac had God come and speak to him and tell him. Abraham had the Lord tell him that he's going to be the father of many children and all that. And what these individuals did was they began to build an altar, a monument, to remember that God met me here. And that's important, to build that altar, that monument, so that you can remember mentally when you're going through something and you don't hear that voice, or you don't feel something that you know, well, this is going to carry me through, you can go back and remember, God brought me through then, and now I can use the faith that I have now because of what he did previously to operate in the now. But in each one of these, the key ingredient is faith. Moses has to have faith in God. And he's telling, and God is telling Moses and those adults that when you have children, you're going to have this story told to them, and they're going to have faith in you that what you're telling them is true. And so forth and so on. And so that monument of just believing, listen, God has done something for me, and I want you to recognize that it can be done, and he can do the same for you. But you might not experience what I'm experiencing. You may not go through what I'm going through, but you still got to believe that God is the one that did it. He's the one that brought us out of Egypt. We didn't do it on our own. It wasn't some negotiating skills. It wasn't some diplomatic thing. It wasn't some law that was passed. It was God that did it. All right. All right. So let's move along. In verse 3, it says, and Moses and Aaron came unto Pharaoh and said unto him, thus saith the Lord God of the Hebrews, how long wilt thou refuse to humble thyself before me? Let my people go, that they might serve me. Now, I underline that word how long, mainly because in Pharaoh's case, it's not a how long, because he's not going to move. See, a lot of times we look at people and we go, well, how long are they going to do that? Not understanding. No, that's what they are. I mean, to make an analogy to say, well, you go outside and talk to a rock. Well, how long are you just going to just be, hard and sit here and don't move? Well, guess what? A rock's not going to move unless it's what? Somebody moves it. So the question of how long to a person like Pharaoh is irrelevant, because Pharaoh is not going to move, no matter what he may try to convince you of, or put a mask on to say I'm going to move, but he's not. And sometimes it's hard to recognize that there are certain people, no matter what you say to them, no matter how long you try to give reasons and philosophy and strategies to them, they're not moving. So the word how long is a word of just, I guess you're not moving then. How long? As long as there is. You're not going to change. You're not going to make any difference. All right? But let's keep going. Look at verse 4. It says, else if thou refuse to let my people go, behold, tomorrow will I bring the locusts in the coast, and they shall cover the face of the earth, for that one cannot be able to see the earth, and they shall eat the residue, that which is escaped, which remaineth from when the hail came, and they shall eat every tree which groweth out of the field, and they shall fill thy house, and thy house and all thy servants, and the house of all the Egyptians, which neither their fathers nor their fathers have seen. In other words, I'm going to bring so many locusts. Y'all had the hail, and the hail destroyed a lot of the crops. But some of the crops may not have been damaged. Well, any ones that survive, when the locusts come, they're taking care of that. And that speaks once again to your work, your savings, you spent time plowing those fields. You spent effort and physical labor getting all those crops to grow. Well, guess what? I'm just killing all of that. And all that time, all that effort, all that sweat is going to be worth nothing. So he's the old saying, that time is money. So that's affecting your economy. It's affecting your ability to have finance and to have the ability to go from one day to the next. And he says, and he shall return himself, and he went out from the presence of Pharaoh. Now, look at verse 7. I think verse 7 is important because we talked about those servants that Brother Matthew pointed out. And I want to go back to those. Look at verse 7. It says, and Pharaoh's servants said unto him, how long shall this man be a snare unto us? So they recognize that right now, everything that Moses and Aaron is saying on the behalf of their God has definitely become something that has hindered us and has halted anything that we're trying to do. And he says, let the men go, that they might serve the Lord their God. Knowest thou not that Egypt is destroyed? Now, that's what the serpent said. The servants are recognizing because they're able to look and they're seeing. Pharaoh is locked into the hardness of his heart, and all he can see is what he wants. I don't want those guys to go. Not knowing that even the servants are recognizing, if you let them go, we might be able to rebuild. But as long as they're here, we're going to continuously be destroyed. But Pharaoh's not seeing that, and he's not allowing that to enter into his thinking and his rationale. Pharaoh is locked. Pharaoh's heart is hard. He is not at all thinking about anything that God can do. He doesn't believe in God. He's not trusting in the Lord. He's locked in. Pharaoh believes in spiritual things. That's why he has his magicians. See, when you believe in spiritual things, but you're not believing in God, well, what spiritual thing are you talking to? What spiritual thing are you interacting with? To what spiritual thing are you a part of? And so it's an important thing to keep in mind that if you are dabbling in the spirit, but you're not touching God, then you're touching something else. And then you find yourself in a situation where you could be operating in the realm of what Satan is in. And that's very dangerous. And that's exactly what Pharaoh is doing here. All right. And so verse 8 says, and Moses and Aaron were brought unto Pharaoh and said unto him, go and serve the Lord your God. But who are they that shall go? So after the servant said what they said to Pharaoh, Pharaoh had Moses and Aaron come back into his presence. And he said this. He said, and Pharaoh said unto them, go and serve the Lord your God. Now, if he stopped there, if Pharaoh had stopped there, then fine. Okay, he's told him to go. But he added on. And why did he add on? Because even though you have the mask on of trying to say, I'm trying to cooperate, it's not real. And so because it's not real, it's going to ooze out still. And he says, but who are they that shall go? All right, so Moses answers him. And Moses said, we will go with our young and with our old and with our sons and with our daughters and with our flocks and with our herds will we go. For we must hold a feast unto the Lord. And he's saying we're going to go and we're going to hold this feast. Look at verse 10. And he said unto them, let the Lord be so with you as I will let you go, and your little ones. Look to it, for evil is before you. So he's saying, what Pharaoh's saying, Moses, I'm going to let you go, but consider your little ones. You don't want them to go out there. Suppose some evil happens to them. So he's almost sounding like he's caring. But the reality is, he knows that if the old go and the herds go, but you leave the children there, that they're going to come back. So once again, Pharaoh's locked in. He's not going to let them go. No matter how he phrases it, no matter what he talks about, no matter how he tries to angle his conversation, Pharaoh's heart is hard. And God knows it's hard. And so he just threw on a mask to kind of look like he's trying to work things out, but he's not. Verse 11. Not so. Go now, ye that are men, and serve the Lord. For ye that are those that desire, and ye shall, and and they were driven out of Pharaoh's presence. So what Pharaoh said, look, if you want to go, I'll let you go, but I'm only going to let the adults go. And if you try to get the children out, you're going to be a problem. Now get out of my presence. All right? So he gave this little order. You can go. I'm going to let you go, but you're going to only go with a compromise. All right? And this is the third compromise that Pharaoh has offered him. Once again, trying to put a mask on that I will try to cooperate. Why don't you kind of cooperate with me? I'm cooperating with you. But this is not going to work as well. He's going to have one more compromise here in just a bit. All right? And in verse 12, and the Lord said unto Moses, stretch forth thy hand over the land of Egypt for the locusts, that they may come upon the land of Egypt and eat every herb of the land, even all that was left from the hail. All right. So once Moses was told to leave, if you want to go, only the adults can leave, but that's all I'm going to allow. And he threw Moses and Aaron out of his presence. Well, then the Lord spoke to Moses and allowed the east wind to come, and that brought the locusts. So now the thing that Moses said would happen is now happening. All right, and so Moses stretched forth his hand and with the rod over the land of Egypt, and the east wind blew upon the land all that day and all that night. And when it was morning, the east wind brought the locusts, and the locusts went up over all the land of Egypt and rested upon all the coasts of Egypt. It was very grievous. It says, before them was no such locust as then, neither after them. All right, so basically we're saying they never had a locust invasion like this before, and they will never have a locust invasion like this again. This is the greatest locust invasion that Egypt has ever seen. Look at verse 15. For they covered the face of the earth, the whole earth. All right, and they ate. It says, so that the land was darkened, and they did eat every herb of the land, and all the fruit trees, all right, and everything that the hail had left that were remaining, and there was nothing green. There was not a green thing in the trees. There wasn't a green herb. There wasn't anything green in the fields. Nothing in the land of Egypt. Everything was devoured. I mean, I could spend some time to talk about this, about how things come around and they eat up what you do. I think it's the prophet Joel talks about the locust coming, and you're putting your money in buckets with holes in it, and no matter what you do, you're going to find that you don't really progress. You may think you're going somewhere, you may think it's happening, but it's not. And so this locust plague speaks to that it just comes and it just devours all your effort, all those things that you did. Look at how much time and effort and money we spent trying to do this, and it comes to nothing. It's now devoured. All right. So now Pharaoh calls, in verse 16 it says, and Pharaoh calls for Moses and Aaron in haste. Well, why is he in haste? Because he is seeing what his servants had just told him. Do you not know that Egypt is destroyed? We have nothing. We have no economy. We don't have anything. And why do we have this? We have this because we're fighting against God. Does it sound familiar?
Sounds like where we live now.
All right. And so...
yeah, it's very familiar.
It does sound familiar. And so we have to keep in mind that... We have to keep in mind that, when you fight against God, number one, you're fighting a losing battle. The only thing God wants you to do is to recognize that He knows what is best. There was an old show back in the, I think it was in the 50s. Some of y'all might remember it. It was called Father Knows Best.
Yeah, right.
Got to be a certain age to remember that.
Yeah, I know you must be ancient.
But in that show, the premise of it, no matter what dilemma came up, somehow or another, the father of the family was able to understand and figure out what's happening. And even though sometimes the wife or the kids or the neighbors or the people on the job didn't agree, he would figure it out. Well, take that and ratchet it up to an infinite degree. God knows best. And that's a reality. This ain't no TV show. This wasn't something that was created in Hollywood. This is the reality of it. And that's the hard thing that we as people don't want to accept. We don't want to accept that God knows best. We think, I know what's best for me. I know what's best. I know what I need. I know what I want. I know what I desire. Well, it may not be best for you. It's like, with me, sometimes I desire to have some cookies and ice cream. But guess what? That ain't what's best for me. I gotta leave that alone. Well, it seems good. It feels good. I feel good when I'm eating it. Yeah, well, okay, you keep doing it. And watch what happens. Long term, you're going to have an issue. So you just take that out of just the simple everyday dietary aspect and add it to, lifestyle, philosophy, your thinking, your theology. All right? We can say, well, I know what's really good for me. We all know what is the proper diet. And if we sat down and we talked about it, we would decide, well, you should eat this, and not this, and not this. All right? And that's fine. And we would pretty much all agree. But then what you'll find out is that people will find disagreement when you start talking about politics. You start talking about theology. You start talking about what God is. And now all of a sudden people have all these different views of what God is and what God is for. And there are people that believe God is here to make me have a good life. That's the purpose of God. And I will say to you that think that that's not the purpose of God. God can grant you a lot of wonderful things and he can bless. But the purpose of God in your life is for you to know him and for him to know him. All right? And if you know God, how he is, you will see him as an all-powerful, all-being, loving, caring, and you will automatically, like Isaiah, when he came into the presence of God, he had the blessing of being able to enter into the presence of God. And he couldn't even accept the fact that he would be there because he saw himself as so wretched. And they had to take coals off the fire and put it on his lips, which gave him temporary covering of his sin to actually, I'm going to use the word relax, but not in the sense that I just can't find a better word, to kind of relax and just thank God for being in his presence when he knew he had no reason for being there. And why am I saying that? I'm saying that to say that God is just that big. He's just that great. He's just that awesome to where you can actually say, well, I don't feel like this is what is good for me, but I'm going to accept that God knows best and I'm going to go forward. And another analogy we can use is the child. Eat your vegetables. Eat your vegetables. Well, at a 4 or 5 year old child don't really understand. They don't understand why eating vegetables is a good thing. But we tell them to do it because we know what's good for them. And they fight and cry and they'll sit there all night long, just as stubborn as they want to be. I'm not eating it because they don't believe that it's worth eating. I'd rather get punished than eat it. And then later on in life they begin to recognize, well, how much like that are we? I'll wait till God comes down and whip me, or God comes down and does whatever he needs to do to me before I change my mind about, what I'm going to do. And we need to be careful with that because we end up in a situation here like Pharaoh. That's exactly what's happening to Pharaoh in Egypt. But when it's all said and done, the scripture says every knee will bow. You will see God as how he is. And every tongue shall confess. But there are people that will confess that don't have the benefit. Because see, even those that reject God will confess that he is God, but don't get the benefit of knowing God in this realm. And so you lose out. And Pharaoh is going to know that God is who he say he is, but he's going to lose out. He's going to get the complete understanding that God is exactly who he say he is, but he's going to lose out. He's not going to get any of the good rewards that could be his if he would have humbled himself to the presence of God, but he refused to do it. All right. So where did I leave off at?
18, 17.
17. So it says, now therefore, forgive, pray thee, my sin, only this once. So now, Pharaoh called back Moses because of the locust. He's got his mask on, and he says, now therefore, forgive, pray thee, my sin, only this once, as though you only made one mistake. Pharaoh has made a few mistakes. And he says, and entreat the Lord your God. Once again, there's the issue. I want you to entreat the Lord your God. So he's looking at, once again, I don't need to come to God. You deal with God. That's your God. It's not my God. All right? And so therein is an issue in there, and it's, once again, it's a problem. Pharaoh is refusing to see that I need God, just like you do. So he said, entreat the Lord your God, that he may take away from me this death only. And he went out of the presence of Pharaoh and entreated the Lord. And verse 19, and the Lord turned the mighty strong west wind, which took away the locusts and cast them into the Red Sea. Therefore remaineth not one locust in all the coast of Egypt. So the Lord went and did what Pharaoh asked Moses to ask the Lord, and it happened. And the locusts are gone. Look at 20. And the Lord hardened Pharaoh's heart. See, Pharaoh had a mask on. Pharaoh tried to act like I'm trying to do it, but what God did was took the mask off and allowed Pharaoh's heart to be what it truly is. And that's the scary thing. Once again, I can't emphasize that enough to people that want to play with God. They want to say, well, I don't know if I know God like I want to know God like Moses knew him. You know, I want a God that I can comprehend, a God that I can understand, a God that I can explain. Well, then he's not that much of a God then. You know, he's just another friend or a companion that you can kind of debate with. But that's not the God that the scripture talks about. And so once Pharaoh made that statement and said, you know, you entreat the Lord listened. He took away the locusts, but he also took away Pharaoh's mask. And that's what this verse 20 talks about. It says, but the Lord hardened Pharaoh's heart so that he would not let the children of Israel go. And the Lord said unto Moses, stretch forth thy hand towards heaven, and there may be darkness over the land of Egypt, even darkness which may be felt. Now, what we have here is another situation of evidence of what they're dealing with. A lot of these plagues, all of these plagues speak to things that the Egyptian culture, the Egyptian spiritual theology clings to and believes. And we kind of talked about it, you know, from time to time, some of these different various things. And there's a lot we could say about it. But the Egyptians had multiple gods that had a variety of different things that they associated with everyday life that they would contribute to one or several of those gods. One of the things that they also worshiped was darkness, the absence of light. And it's interesting that people want to discuss, well, where is darkness? In our Job study, we're going to get to that, where God is going to say, where does darkness go when the light happens? You know, because the minute the light goes away, darkness is right there. So how far away does darkness go when light shows up? Must not go too far away, because the minute light goes away, darkness comes back. And you go, well, I think I understand that, but do you really? Do we really understand that? You know, and so, but anyway, so this darkness is coming. And one of the things that the Egyptian culture did was doing things with they considered secret philosophies, secret societies, doing things without people knowing that you're doing it. Kind of mystical stuff that folks would do under undercover in the guise of darkness to manipulate other people. All right, and so a lot of this is coming back, and so once again they are dealing with another one of the so-called gods that they believed in, and now they are thrown into darkness. So God is saying, you want to know who really knows how to control darkness? I do. And you say, well, okay, well, yeah, fine, darkness. All right, well, you take light away and you get darkness. And we think that's what it is. And to our understanding, that's about as far as we can go. But that don't mean that's all that there is to it. Because what we'll see here, look at this. Look at verse 22. And Moses stretched forth his hand towards heaven, and there was darkness in all the land of Egypt for 3 days. So this is 3 days of darkness. And we talked about how a lot of times you think of the word 3. How long was Jesus in the tomb? He was in the tomb for 3 days. And there's some parallels that we can go there. But I'll just mention it without going into a long study about that.
Well, we know that 3 is God's number of dealings, right? He always deals in 3s.
Mm-hmm. It certainly does. Certainly does. All right. And look at verse 23. It says, and they saw not one another, neither rose any out of his place for 3 days. But all the children of Israel had light in their dwelling. Now, explain that to me. Now, somebody would say, well, that's how it is on the earth. Half the earth is dark, the other half has light. So it's just a play with shadows. And yeah, it could be. I mean, you can come up with any other kind of explanation. There was some kind of eclipse that happened that only covered Egypt and not the Israelite portion. What I come to when I read this is that there are deeper things that I just don't understand and cannot comprehend. This is why I'm oftentimes, and I say it a lot, and I'll kind of touch on it again here. There are things that are real that we can't comprehend, but they are real, and we can operate in them. We talk about a fourth dimension. Well, we know it's real. Our mathematics say it, and there's certain things that we can do scientifically and computer wise that operate in that dimension. But if you actually lived in a fourth dimension, you could take a basketball and turn it inside out without taking the air out, because you would have another dimension to fold and move the basketball into. Mathematically, you can get a model that can do that. You can get something called a tesseract that has 90-degree angles on all sides of a four-dimensional cube. Well, you can go 90 degrees to the left, 90 degrees to the right, 90 degrees up, 90 degrees down. But now where's the other 90 degrees going to? How do you connect the rest of the tesseract? Well, in our space, we can't do it. But we can build one with a computer, with computer simulation using mathematics. So it has been proven that four-dimensional reality can actually be and can exist and can be real. But we can't comprehend it. If I say point to a fourth dimension direction, I can't do it, neither can you, because we're locked in to 3 dimensions. Now, why do I keep saying stuff like this over and over and over again? Because I'm trying to get us to understand and to know that there are realms in which God operates that we have no concept of. God lives in realms outside of time. You see, I can think of another little mathematical experiment, because if God creates time, in the beginning God created the heavens and the earth. Well, if he creates it, he created the space as well as the time the space operates in. Now, if you have 2 directions of time, we only got one. There's only one we live in. Time only goes in one direction. It's a one-directional time. But you take right now, this present, this time. If you have one time, I hope you can see my finger here, going this way. If you have another time, and let's say right here where my fingernail is, that's where we are right now. That's our present. That's what's happening. And you take another time, and it's not going the same way, but it's going a different direction. You can have another time going this way, and now this time can be in our present for as long as it has time. So that means this particular present that we have, this time, let's say this time is 1,000,000 years. It can spend 1,000,000 years in our present. That means it can spend 1,000,000 years talking to each person in this particular moment, because it's going through our time in one stage. Now imagine God that has not just one time outside of our time, but how about multiple times outside of our time? He could be in our past, our present, and our future, all at the same time. Because that's the way he operates with time. He can produce multiple realities of time. Just like God can manifest himself as multiple realities of personages. That's why God can be Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit. See, God is not like us. And we keep trying to be like Pharaoh and Egypt and make God in a means in which we can explain it. And the only way Egypt could make God to where they could explain it, they had to make thousands of gods in order for it to all make sense. But no, there's one God that is just infinite in his reality. And that's where we need to recognize, and that's where faith will kick in, when you start believing in that God. Because see, if you're only believing in a God that's trying to make your job better or your life better or your health better, then that's a servant. That's a genie that you rub the bottle and say, give me 3 wishes. That's not the kind of God I'm serving. That's not the kind of God we're talking about here. We're talking about the God of all creation, which Pharaoh refuses to acknowledge. And therefore Pharaoh I want to do things my way, and I want God to fit into my plans, which is the problem. All right. So, before I went off on that tirade, where was I at? I can't help myself when I'm trying to explain the goodness and how good God is. All right. I think I'm on, I finished 23. Look at 24. It says, and Pharaoh called unto Moses and said, go ye and serve the Lord. All right. So here he is with this mask on again. He says, go and serve the Lord. But he keeps going. He doesn't stop there. Only let your flocks and your herd be stayed. And let your little ones also go with you. So, okay, you can take your children. You can go. Get out of here. You, the adults, but leave your flocks and your herds. Well, how long are you going to be out there? You don't have no mules. You don't have no cows. You don't have you don't have no substance, because that represents your economy, your everyday means of living. So basically he's saying, Pharaoh, you can leave, but leave every penny, every dime you got, leave all your clothes, leave everything, leave anything that's of value, leave it there for your future. So you won't have any future going forward. And Moses recognizes that as a mask, something once again that Pharaoh is just putting on to try to maintain the control that he has. Because see, Pharaoh wants to be in control. But when you let go and let God be in control, it is so freeing. I'm not saying it ain't scary. We still worry when we get sick or we lose a job and all that. But when it was all said and done, we're like, you know what? God's got this. And that's good to have. And Jesus told us to do that. He said, what? Cast your cares on me, for I care for you. All right. So it's important that we learn to do that. But to learn to do that, we have to believe God is the kind of God that he's trying to describe to us, and not one that we want to create in our own image, in our own mind, in our own thinking. All right. So he said, only let your herd stay, and let your little ones go with you. 25. And Moses said, thou must give us also sacrifices and burnt offerings. All right, so because they know they're going out there to serve and worship God, and we're going to get into that. I won't spend the time now to talk about why these sacrifices and these burnt offerings are so important. We're going to connect back. Remember when God created the heavens and the earth, and he first created the animals, and we said, well, he just wanted to have animals. Well, God knew that those animals were going to be important. They were going to be a temporary stay of communication to build that temporary continuous connection of relationship until he sent himself down. See, those animals are going to be sacrifices, and they're going to be burnt offerings, and they're going to be used to worship and to serve God. And we'll get more into that down the road. So he says, thou must give us also sacrifices and burnt offerings, that we may sacrifice unto the Lord our God. Verse 26, our cattle also shall go with us. There shall not an hoof be left behind. So Moses is saying, I'm not leaving anything. I'm not leaving a single hoof. He didn't say foot, he said a hoof. So that means I'm taking all my cattle, all my horses, all the donkeys, all the camels, all the sheep. Everything's coming. We're not leaving anything. I'm taking all that I have and I'm going with God. See, one of the things that sometimes is with these compromises, well, I want to serve God, but I'm not going to serve Him with my substance. Well, I'm going to serve God, but I'm not going to show it before my children. Well, I'm going to serve God, but I'm not going to go very far. That was one of the earlier compromises. You can go serve the Lord your God, but don't go very far. All right? And so all these various compromises that were offered, once again, are some that people do accept. Yeah, I will go, but I'm not going to try to, do it in a full sense or in a full way. All right. It says, therefore must we take to serve the Lord our God, and we know not what we must serve the Lord until we come thither. So he's saying, I don't know what God's going to ask us to do, but I do know that we need to offer up these offerings. Now we can go all the way back to Cain and Abel. Remember, Cain tried to bring forth of the field, and Abel brought forth what? A sacrifice. He killed the animal. But we can even go back further than that. We can go back to Adam and Eve, because Adam and Eve tried to cover themselves with what? Plants. But God did what? God was the first one to slay an animal and covered Adam and Eve with what? Skins of the animal. All right, which was and we'll get more into that a little later about the importance of the sacrifice. All right, verse 27. But the Lord hardened Pharaoh's heart. See that? Pharaoh tried to put on the mask. God took it off. All right. And we talked about this before, but you look about where it said the difference in when God says He hardened Pharaoh's heart versus when the scripture says Pharaoh hardened his heart. And you'll see that there were opportunities for Pharaoh to escape his own prejudice and his own incorrect theology. God gave him opportunities, just like in Revelation with the church of Laodicea. There was those 7 churches, and the church of Laodicea, Jesus is on the outside knocking, trying to get in. And if you let me in, I will sup with you. But if you don't open the door, I'm still on the outside. In other words, I'm not in you, and I don't know you, and I don't fellowship with you. And so God tried to do that with Pharaoh, knocking on Pharaoh's heart. Pharaoh would not let him in. But yet Pharaoh continued to try to do what he wanted to do. All right, 27. But the Lord hardened Pharaoh's heart, and he would not let them go. And Pharaoh said unto him, Get thee from me. Take heed to thyself. See my face no more. And Pharaoh's talking real now. See, he's letting his whole heart speak now. I'm going to tell you exactly what I feel about this. I don't want to see your face again. I'm not going to deal with this anymore. And look what he threatens. For in the day thou seest my face, thou shalt die. In other words, I'm done. The reality of what Pharaoh feels and what he thinks is now coming out. God has taken the mask off and allowed Pharaoh's true hard heart to show. If I see you again, Moses, I'm going to kill you. I'm going to put you to death. 29. And Moses said, Thou hast spoken well. I will see thy face again no more. And so Moses is letting them know what you just said, Pharaoh, was correct. Me and you will not see each other face to face. We're done. Now when we look into next week, we will see the reason why. And I think we can kind of, we all remember the story, and we know that 10th plague is coming. All right. And the problem that we see here, once again, with what we're trying to get here is God trying to show to a nation who he is. I mean, whatever you think is mystical and magical, I can control that. I'm the God of that. So whatever you think about, I mean, who talks to locusts and tell them to go this way or go that way? Who talks to the lice or to the flies? Who can control the weather and the hail? Who can do all that? And we look at it and say, well, but all that stuff brought destruction. But it only brought destruction on the natural. It only brought destruction on the things that can be redeemed and can be replaced. The scripture says, what does it profit a man if he gains the whole world and loses what?
So
His soul. And that's what God's control. That's what God is concerned about. We often worry that does God care for me because he's worried he don't let me have the job I want, or he don't let me have the car I want, or I didn't get the house I want, or I ain't got the whatever it is that I'm trying to get, and I don't have it. And you say, well, God don't care for me. No, God cares for you, the real you, your soul. You see? I mean, if you walk outside and you standing on a rainy, muddy day, and the bus comes along and splashes mud all over your clothes, okay? Well, the clothes are what? They're ruined. And for the time that you got to get home, you got to wear those clothes until you can get back to the house and change, so people can see. Oh wow, look at you! You're a muddy mess. Yeah, but it's not me. It's my clothes. And granted, I am wearing the clothes. So in a sense, yes, I am a muddy mess in that sense. But all I got to do is take off the clothes, shower up, and I'm good. And that's the real concern. The bus didn't hit me. The bus put mud on my clothes. And that's what the Lord's trying to get us to understand. You got a lot of mud that's going to splash on your life. Health-wise, financial, social, a lot of that's going to splash on you. But the real concern is your soul. That's what God's focused on. Jesus tried to get us to understand. If God gave you everything, what profit would it be if you don't know God and you lose your soul? Therein is the bottom line. And that's consistent through the entire Bible. No matter what Pharaoh tried to do to show that he is king of Pharaoh and he's the ruler, God tried to show him, no, you think you control this, but watch me show you that you don't. Now, can you break down your thinking and understand that I am the God of gods and try to get to know me? And that is what the Lord wants. That's his desire. Like with David, which is why God says that David was a man after God's own heart. For David desired to what? To know God. Oh, that I might what? Know you.
seek it.
All right. And so those are the things that the Lord's trying to get us to understand. All right. So we're going to stop here. Any other comments or questions? All right. And we certainly thank God, and the Lord willing, we'll pick up again on Wednesday in our Job study, and then we'll be back here to finish up these plagues, Lord willing, on next Sunday. All right.